Last month, we formulated a morning burst facial cleanser, a copper peptide serum, and a triple lipid facial moisturizer, all part of a complete facial skincare routine. Now, I personally do not subscribe to that 10-step K beauty routine. It's way too much for me. In the morning, I think you need a good cleanser, a vitamin C serum, a really good moisturizer, and especially a sunscreen. Please don't skip that step. You need it. So at nighttime, if you wore makeup during the day, double cleanse. Then follow with a toner, a peptide serum, and a moisturizer. Exfoliate once a week and add an eye cream only if you really need it. That's it. But that first evening cleanse really matters because makeup and sunscreen can be difficult to remove, and a cleansing balm made from nothing but oils and wax can leave your face feeling really greasy and coated. So today, we're making an oil to milk makeup cleansing balm that emulsifies with water and rinses away cleanly. A cleansing balm sounds simple enough. Take some oils, add a little wax so it holds together in a jar, and now you have something that can dissolve makeup. And technically, yes, oils are very good at breaking down makeup, sunscreen, mascara, and long wear products because those products are designed to resist water. But removing makeup from the surface of your skin is only half the job. The real problem starts when you add water. If the formula is nothing more than oils and wax, the water has no reason to mix with it. The oils may loosen the makeup, but instead of rinsing away, everything can stay sitting on the skin as a heavy, greasy layer. That is why some homemade cleansing balms feel beautiful while you are massaging them in, but once you rinse, your face still feels coated. So, the difference between a basic balm and an actual oil to milk cleansing balm is not the wax. The wax only gives the product its shape. The oil to milk transformation comes from using the right emulsifier system, ingredients that allow that oil phase to break apart and disperse into the rinse water. When that emulsifier system is missing, or there simply isn't enough of it, you end up moving the makeup around rather than fully rinsing it away. You may still see mascara around the eyes, sunscreen sitting along the hairline, or foundation collecting around the nose. And even when the makeup looks gone, the skin can still feel slippery, waxy, or coated. That does not automatically mean the balm is clogging your pores, and it does not mean that every oil or wax is comedogenic. That whole subject gets oversimplified online. What we can say is that a formula that leaves a noticeable oily or waxy residue may not be comfortable for everyone, especially if the user does not follow with a second cleanser. That is why the first step of a double cleanse needs to do two things well: dissolve the makeup and then release it into the rinse water. The wax system also matters. Too much hard wax and the product may drag across the skin, resist melting, or leave behind a stubborn film. Too little structure, and you no longer have a balm. You have a cleansing oil sitting in a jar. So, this product has to balance cleansing, emulsification, texture, melting behavior, and rinse off. You cannot solve all of that with one ingredient. The goal with this formula was to create a balm that feels rich enough to massage over dry skin, but does not leave you feeling like you coated your face in lip balm. The first part of the formula is the solvent phase. We are using several lightweight esters along with a small amount of high oleic safflower oil. Those ingredients give us enough slip to massage the product over the skin while helping dissolve makeup, sunscreen, and long wear products. Then we have the ingredients responsible for the oil to milk transformation: polyglycerol 10 oleate and polyglycerol 4 caprate. Those are the ingredients doing the real work once water is added. They allow the oil phase to disperse into that cloudy, milky rinse instead of floating on top of the water or staying behind on the skin. Sorbitan oleate and soy lecithin provide additional support on the oil side of the system. For the balm itself, we are using sunflower wax, bihenyl bihenate, and C1018 triglycerides, also known as butter pearls. Each one contributes something different to the final structure, so the balm can hold its shape in the jar, scoop cleanly, and then melt as you massage it into the skin. And because this is going into a jar, and we all know somebody is going to put wet fingers into it, we are also preserving it with Euxyl PE 9010. The target is a smooth, scoopable balm that melts into an oil, loosens makeup and sunscreen, turns milky when water is added, and rinses with as little greasy residue as possible. That is what makes this more than just oils and wax. The chemistry here is really about balance. We need enough cleansing power to lift everything off, enough emulsification to carry it into the rinse water, and enough structure to give us a balm that still melts easily on the skin. That's the strategy behind the formula before we ever start heating or mixing anything. If you're curious about what all is included on Patreon, take a look at the perks coming up on the screen next. That's where I share the extra details that can really help take your projects to the next level. Okay, let's head over to the bench right here and start making this. Okay, let's start with phase A, which is the main balm phase. First into the vessel is going to be C1215 alkyl benzoate. This is a light spreading ester, and it's one of the main makeup and sunscreen dissolving emollients in the formula. It spreads really easily, so it's going to help the balm move across the skin without feeling heavy. Next, we're going to be adding some cocoa caprylate caprate, which is a lightweight emollient, and it's going to give us the slip that we need, and it helps the balm spread quickly while we're massaging it over the face. Then I'm going to be adding some dicaprylyl carbonate. This is another fast spreading emollient, but it has a noticeably drier finish, so it helps keep the finished balm from feeling overly oily or sluggish. Isoamylorate is a lightweight spreading ester that's going to come in next. It's going to improve the glide while also helping with the lighter rinse after feel that we're trying to achieve here today. Now I'm adding some caprylic capric triglyceride. This is a medium spreading triglyceride. This one is going to give us a solvent phase a little more body, and it helps balance the overall melt profile so that the formula isn't made entirely from very fast, dry feeling esters. Quick clarification, because CCT, MCT, and fractionated coconut oil get used almost interchangeably. It can absolutely be the same C8, C10 triglyceride material and even carry the same inky, which is caprylic capric triglyceride, but not always. MCT is a broader category, and fractionated coconut oil is used differently by different suppliers. So when I'm formulating, I don't rely on the common name. I check the inky and the supplier specs. What I'm using here today is specifically caprylic capric triglyceride, a very stable, low viscosity emollient with a much lighter feel than the whole coconut oil. And then the final liquid that I'm going to be adding in this group is high oleic safflower oil. I'm only using a modest amount because I want some of that familiar triglyceride richness without turning this into a heavy oil balm. So together, these 6 ingredients make up the main solvent system. Their job is to spread over the skin and loosen up your makeup, sunscreen, mascara, and other oil-soluble products. And now we can add the ingredients that make this an actual oil to milk cleanser rather than just oils thickened with wax. So the first in, I got to be careful because it's really, really hot here today in my lab, and I put it on a really small watch glass. I should have put it on the bigger one. Doesn't matter. Let me stop shaking. There we go. First up is going to be your polyglycerol 10 oleate. This is the primary hydrophilic emulsifier in the formula. Once the water is added during use, it helps the oil phase break apart and disperse into that cloudy, milky rinse. This is very viscous, very viscous. You'll see. See how nothing's happening? It's very viscous. Just going to give that a little bit of a mix here. We are popping this on top of the hot plate, so no worries there, but this is really a viscous. It's hard to work with and hard to measure out because it's so viscous. Next is polyglycerol 4 caprate, also extremely viscous. This supports the polyglycerol 10 oleate by improving water dispersibility, milk formation, and the rinse off. It's a co-surfactant and solubilizer. Then I'm going to be adding lipophilic sorbitan oleate. This one is more oil loving, so it supports compatibility within the oil phase and works alongside the more water loving emulsifiers. And the next ingredient is polyhydroxystearic acid, also known as castor wax. In this formula, it provides oil phase structural support and helps give the balm a more controlled, cohesive texture. And now we can add the solid structurants. First is going to be sunflower wax. This is the high melting structurant wax that gives the balm stability and helps bind all of those liquid emollients into a product that can hold its shape in the jar. Next in is bihenyl bihenate. This builds the crystalline structure and body, but it also gives us a more controlled melt than we would get from just relying on one hard wax alone. And finally, I'm going to be adding C1018 triglycerides, which I have in the form of butter pearls. These act as a secondary structurant, helping to soften and balance the wax network so that the finished balm should still scoop and melt easily. And now I'm going to go ahead and stick this on top of my hot plate between 180 and 185 degrees Fahrenheit. Slow, gentle mixing while that is heating and melting everything down. We need every solid completely melted before moving forward. I don't want to see any wax particles, little crystals, or cloudy specks remaining in the batch. Okay, halfway through, I switched to a water bath because it was just taking too long on top of the hot plate, and I didn't want everything to get too hot because that can happen. Beakers can crack and break. Thank God that's never happened to me, but it absolutely can happen. So I just switched to a water bath to speed things along. We're good to go now. All right, let's take our temps, see where we're at. Still way too hot to add my last ingredient, so I'm going to continue to mix. There's no reason really to hold this on the heat any longer than necessary. From here, I'm just going to keep on mixing slowly as it begins to cool and the structure begins developing. And then once the temperature comes down to around 140 degrees or lower, I can start adding phase B. So I'm just going to be here stirring. I'll let you guys have a look so you can see that there's no flakes, no crystals, no powders, no chunks. There's nothing floating on the bottom. Everything is fully melted. So just keep stirring until this cools down. We want that structure to start forming. Okay, now that we are at temperature, we can go ahead and start adding our phase B. And the first one is going to be lipophilic soy lecithin. This is another oil compatible co-emulsifier, and it provides additional support for dispersion during the rinse. You'll notice the color change because soy lecithin is orange in color. Make sure you give this a really good stir and make sure that's all broken up and dissolved before moving on. All right, next is going to be our vitamin E. This is another antioxidant for the oil phase, helping to protect the oils and the esters from oxidation. This is not the preservative, though, just the antioxidant. You can see that things are starting to solidify a little bit around the edges, so make sure you're scraping that down before you continue mixing. And then lastly, we are going to add a preservative, even though this is an anhydrous formulation with no water added. The preservative we are adding today is Euxyl PE9010, which is a blend of phenoxyethanol and ethyl hexyl glycerin. So again, even though this is anhydrous and going into a jar, you know, there's a very realistic possibility that somebody's going to reach into it with damp fingers. So I chose to include a preservative system to address that foreseeable contamination during use. So just mix in everything in phase B thoroughly, making sure that everything is completely uniform. Again, scrape down your sides because as everything continues cooling, things are going to be solidifying all on the edges. So make sure you scrape that all down, add that back in, and then continue mixing. As the balm continues cooling, I'm watching the texture for pourability purposes. I want it fluid enough to pour smoothly, but not so hot and thin that all of the structure develops unevenly after it enters the jar. Once it starts to gain a little bit of body, that's when we pour it into the jars. You can feel the mixture starting to develop, get a little bit more viscous. That's what we're looking for before we start pouring it into our jars here. You see how everything is starting to form now? The body is building. You see that? I'm going to stir just another minute or so, and then I'm going to pour. And then I'm going to leave them completely undisturbed at room temperature overnight. I am not refrigerating them or trying to speed up the cooling process because rapid cooling can affect how the wax structure develops. All right, I'm going to give it a final scrape, and then I'm going to pour. All right, here we go. See how solid everything got relatively quickly? Just going to mix this around a little bit. This one I'll be keeping for myself, obviously. Even though I don't wear makeup. Special occasions, yes, but I'm not a makeup wearer. Sunscreen, though, this is definitely going to help with that. All right. Like I said, I'm going to just leave these undisturbed overnight, and I'll bring you guys back tomorrow. Okay, now that the balm has had time to fully set, let's take a look at the finished texture. It holds its shape in the jar, but it's still soft enough to scoop without having to dig. I'm going to use this small one over here. You can see the texture. I'm not digging, but I'm scooping. That's the texture we're looking for. Okay, so let's do a proper demonstration here. I wanted you guys to take a look at the texture. Now I've gone ahead and mixed that up really well. Not that it needed it, but I just wanted you guys to see the actual texture of the finished product. So before I put on any type of stain on my skin, so you guys can see that it actually does remove things, I wanted you to see the milkiness of the product. So we're going to take some, put it on our hand here with nothing else on there, and I'm just going to rub it in. And as soon as I start spreading this over my dry skin, it starts melting into a smooth cleansing oil. So there's no gritty texture, there's no hard wax drag. All right, so I just wanted you guys to see this on dry skin first. And now let's take a look at how it turns into the oil to milk. I'm going to add some water. Look at that. Look at how nice that turns into that milk. Beautiful. And then it just rinses away clean. Still have some on my fingers. There you go. Now, let's go ahead and dry my hand. I'm going to go ahead and mimic some makeup. I don't wear makeup, only on special occasions. So I'm going to go ahead and take some red Lake 27. Brown oxide. And a black Sharpie. All right, let's go ahead and get some of our product. Put it over here where there isn't anything. And let's start massaging that in. So see how this is dissolving that faux makeup? Like everything is completely dissolved already. And this has enough slip to move easily, but it does not feel like, like a thick layer of straight oil sitting on top of the skin. Just go ahead and get those off of my fingers. Now let's add a little bit of water. You can see how nicely this rinses away without me even rubbing it, but I am going to go ahead and continue to cleanse the top of the skin to try to get off all of this faux makeup. So this product is not designed to create a big lather. The important visual here was that milk formation and how evenly the oily layer disperses once that water is added. And after rinsing, my skin feels smooth and comfortable, but not heavily coated. I'm not feeling a stubborn waxy film or a layer of floating oil that still needs to be wiped away. So we have that full transition that we were aiming for. We have a soft balm in the jar, a silky oil during the massage, and a light milky rinse once that water is introduced. So, what we learned today is that a cleansing balm has to do more than melt makeup. The oil phase loosens the makeup and the sunscreen. The wax system gives the product its shape, but the formula has to emulsify properly once water is added. Without that step, you can end up with makeup that has been dissolved but not fully carried away. When you evaluate a cleansing balm, pay attention to the entire performance, how it scoops, how it melts on your skin, how quickly it turns milky, and how the skin feels after you rinse it away. That is what is going to tell you whether you made a complete cleansing system or you simply just thickened a group of oils. If you found this content helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with another skincare formula or DIY cosmetic maker. And remember, the complete formula library is available over on Patreon. Thanks for hanging out with me today at Creation Station. I'll see you in the next formulation.